Hello, good evening. You're watching Times Now. I'm Shreya Upadhyay. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the Alaska summit. The highly anticipated summit between U.S. President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin has ended without any agreement to halt or resolve the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. While both leaders described the talks as productive, there was no breakthrough as such or a commitment on the central issue of the conflict. Donald Trump has claimed great progress had been made, stating that many points were agreed upon, though a few remain unresolved. He, however, claimed that there's no deal until there's a deal.
We had a very productive meeting. There were many points that we agreed on, most of them, I would say, a couple of big ones that we haven't quite gotten there, but we've made some headway. So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO in a little while. I will call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelenskyy and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them. They're going to have to agree with what Marco and Steve and some of the great people from the Trump administration who've come here, Scott and John Ratcliffe. Thank you very much. But we have some of our really great leaders. They've been doing a phenomenal job. We also have some tremendous Russian business representatives here, and I think, everybody wants to deal with us. We've become the hottest country anywhere in the world in a very short period of time, and we look forward to that. We look forward to dealing. We're going to try and get this over with.
Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin has praised his recent talks with Trump, describing them as constructive and saying that the two leaders have reached an understanding. In fact, Putin also reaffirmed Donald Trump's long-standing claim that the war in Ukraine would not have started if Donald Trump was the president that time, saying that the conflict escalated during the Biden administration. He also alleged that he had warned Biden about the risks of escalation prior to the outbreak of the hostilities.
I'd like to remind you that in 2022, during the last contact with the previous administration, I tried to convince my previous American colleague that the situation should not be brought to the point of no return when it would come to hostilities. And I said it quite directly back then that it's a big mistake. Today, when President Trump saying that if he was the president back then, there will be no war. And I'm quite sure that it would indeed be so. I can confirm that. I think that overall, me and President Trump have built a very good, businesslike, and trustworthy contact. And I have every reason to believe that moving down this path, we can come, and the sooner the better, to the end of the conflict in Ukraine.
Now let's take a look at the key takeaways, viewers, from this meeting. While no ceasefire has been agreed upon yet, the Alaska talks saw significant progress. Vladimir Putin, in fact, also expressed interest in ending the war and suggested that the next meeting could be held in Moscow. What grabbed eyeballs was how Russian President Putin received an unusually warm welcome as he arrived on American soil. This visit began with a grand reception, a firm handshake, smiles, and a ride in the presidential limousine. American F-35 fighter jets and a B-2 stealth bomber conducted a flypast to mark Putin's arrival. Donald Trump, remember, has posted on Truth Social that he held calls with Zelenskyy and other European leaders as well. And Volodymyr Zelenskyy is now scheduled to meet with Donald Trump at the White House on Monday. That's the 18th of August. Trump also said that instead of a ceasefire agreement, the focus should be on achieving a direct peace agreement. Taking to social media platform X, Zelenskyy expressed his desire for what he calls real peace and said that the killings must end immediately. He added that during his phone call with Donald Trump, he called for tougher sanctions on Putin. Meanwhile, how has India reacted? Well, the External Affairs Ministry has issued a statement welcoming the Alaska dialogue, calling the pursuit of peace as commendable and appreciating the progress made at the summit. The statement also reiterated that dialogue and diplomacy remain the best way forward. Now, viewers, remember, India has kept a close watch on the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska, with Washington, D.C., remember, slapping an additional 25% tariff on India over the Russian oil imports. The deadline for that levy is 27th of August. A deal to end the Russia-Ukraine war could have brought respite, but while no breakthrough came, the talks have sparked cautious optimism with signs of some progress. Let's decode the summit for you and the way forward. Let me introduce my guests on the show. Mr. Karl, career CIA officer, former national intelligence officer and senior partner, Fair Observer Intelligence Consulting Firm, joins us this evening, as well as Mr. Ashok Sajanhar, former diplomat. Good evening and namaskar to both of you gentlemen. Karl, can I first begin by asking you your key takeaways from this summit? Some say that this has been a loss for Donald Trump, considering that Putin has got what he wanted, that is no ceasefire, no peace agreement yet. Some say this is a step forward and therefore we should look at it with optimism, just the fact that Donald Trump has been able to begin these talks.
Well, the meeting was certainly a success for Vladimir Putin and for Russia. For Trump, it's not a failure because the talks continue, and he essentially is carrying the water for Vladimir Putin. The fact that there's not an agreement yet to end the war doesn't really matter to Trump, so long as he's pressuring and moving in the direction that he seems to want, and he really, I think, wants the Nobel Prize and then to feel good about himself. While doing that, or doing that while serving the interests of Russia. So it's been an advance for Russia, not bad for Trump from his perspective, and bad for most everybody else.
But did you expect some sort of solid commitment to come out of this summit? Or did you think that this is only going to be the first step, the preliminary groundwork for the successive meetings that we will now witness?
I think what I expected was that Trump thinks in a way that he will say or do what he imagines helps him at a given moment. And then when the next moment occurs, as it does, he will go through the same process. There's no grand strategy, particularly, except the default inclination to support things Russian and strong men with whom he identifies emotionally and can understand because they wish to impose their will. And that's how Trump thinks. Beyond that, I don't think there's been a particular objective or plan or strategy in mind other than to bring an end to the war, which, as Trump is approaching it, means on Russia's terms, and that's the end of the thinking. There's no strategy in this man's mind.
Ambassador Sajanhar, do you agree with what Glenn is saying, that there is no strategy? And, of course, we all know that the focus is centrally on getting a Nobel Peace Prize. But as far as strategy is concerned, as far as getting Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Vladimir Putin onto the negotiating table is concerned, do you think that Donald Trump has been or will be able to get that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Shreya, for having me on your show. I would tend to agree with that. There doesn't appear to be any grand strategy as far as Mr. Trump's engagement with the Russia-Ukraine conflict and with Mr. Putin is concerned. You would have seen that he has blown hot and cold, both with Zelenskyy as well as with Putin in the last several weeks and months. For instance, just to give you an example, Shreya, he went there saying that, we have to get a ceasefire. And he's been talking about a ceasefire. First, he was talking about a temporary ceasefire for 1 month, etc. And now he has completely flipped his position, which is, okay, ceasefire is not important. What we should have is a comprehensive peace deal between the two countries. I think it is laudable if you are able to get it, but you have to approach it step by step. You look at Putin. Has he changed his stance even a single iota? Has he moved from his, original objective that we have to get no NATO membership for Ukraine, keeping all the territories? As far as security, there are no NATO forces to be kept on the periphery or on the territory of Ukraine. There should be very significant demilitarization of the Ukrainian army, etc., etc. There have been all these demands that Putin has been asking. You would recall that even earlier when it was mentioned that it was, let's have a ceasefire and without any conditions. And he said first, these are the preconditions, and only after that would a ceasefire be considered. So right now he has brought these conditions right and center. And, a discussion on
would you not give Trump the benefit of doubt? I know he can be unpredictable and bizarre at most moments, but would you give him that benefit of doubt that before the meeting perhaps he was thinking of a ceasefire agreement, but after meeting Putin, he did think that perhaps a direct peace agreement could be something that is achievable in the near future?
Either you can say, Shreya, that you can give him the benefit of the doubt, or you can say that he's very flippant. He's not at all convinced of what he's doing. He just wants something, as I think Glenn Karl said, he's really looking at the Nobel Peace Prize. What is, in terms of security of Ukraine, in terms of security of Europe, that does not seem to concern him at all. What also concerns him is in terms of trade deals, because, that is what Putin and Trump seem to have spoken about, to a great extent. So I think he has his own ideas, objectives. Maybe the security of Ukraine is not really all that much, when he said right at the beginning that there will have to be some swapping of territories.
Okay. Glenn Karl, in the interview that he gave post the summit, Donald Trump said that there is one unresolved issue, and that is becoming perhaps one of the biggest challenges to be resolved. He didn't mention, he said, I rather wouldn't go ahead with it publicly. But what do you think could it be? Could it be centering around the territorial dispute that stays, the fact that Putin is saying we want control of the eastern Ukraine region, and Zelenskyy has been unrelenting in giving up?
Well, that might be the case, but I think we're making the error of trying to discern too much reason, intent, and sensible thinking, rational, linear logic in the mind of Donald Trump. As our colleague said, or we both said, there really is not, and this is not I'm not denigrating him, I'm characterizing him based on observation. There is not a lot of structural thought or direction other than momentary reactions to what is happening and what he then thinks will help him. Now, we know, however, that he is unconcerned with, hostile to, views as a tool for his personal advancement, Ukraine, and that he admires Vladimir Putin. Now, this one thing that remains he's talking about probably is, can we convince or force Zelenskyy to agree to what will stop the war? And Putin has not changed anything. And it's not to say that it's nonsense what Putin said and Trump agreed about on the war would not have happened had Biden not been president and Trump had, is self-serving garbage. I mean, I'm going to take my own trash to the garbage in about an hour, and I should take that along with it. It's just it's more than offensive, and yet we are all forced to try to discern some sort of good sense or purpose to come out of this, and the purpose is to serve Donald Trump's ego and Vladimir Putin's objectives. Who invaded Ukraine? Joe Biden? Please.
Okay. Ambassador Sajanhar, we've been seeing these visuals that we're playing out for our viewers, that of the warm handshakes and the smiles. And this is unprecedented in the way that it's after 10 years that Vladimir Putin has, come to America. He has met with the U.S. president. How do you see this relationship going forward, considering also the fact that after this, now on Monday, we're expecting Zelenskyy to travel to D.C. and meet Donald Trump at the Oval Office?
Yeah, before coming to this question, Shreya, if you permit, I'll just like to make a couple of comments on what you had asked, whether it would be the exchange of territory which could have been the stumbling point.
Yes.
And in my view, you see, even Zelenskyy himself had stated sometime in the past that, he was willing to look at, some territory going to Russia. That was quite some, maybe a year and a half ago, when discussions with Russia were going on. So I think whether it is Zelenskyy or it is Europe, or definitely it is Mr. Trump, they do know that a little bit of some territory, maybe 2 provinces or something, that would have to go to Russia, also Crimea. So I think possibly that would not have been, the breaking the deal issue. Maybe it is in terms of providing security for Ukraine in the post-peace scenario, in terms of, whether NATO will be able to provide weapons, equipment, will be able to station troops there. Possibly that could have been the make or break issue. But, coming to your question that, in terms of the warm handshakes, etc., I think it is very, number one, very characteristic of Mr. Trump, but also very uncharacteristically what he had said. When he was flying to Alaska, Donald Trump had said that if I understand that Mr. Putin is not serious about a ceasefire, I'm going to immediately walk out of the room. That's what he said. So, he doesn't stick to what he says. It is, his momentary, transient whims and fancies that he works on the basis of. And I don't know whether he's taking some serious advice from his advisors that, you have to stick to your, after all, your positions, you must agree, you have come to them after deep thought, and you must stick to those positions rather than sort of, just throwing them out completely. And I agree with Glenn Clow on what he says, that, this is pandering to what Putin said about Trump. It is pandering to his ego. It is flattering him. The whole world seems to be doing it. That's why he's got quite used to it.
Just the fact that you've rolled out the red carpet for the Russian president, you've got all this posturing in front of the cameras, of course, goes on to reflect what Donald Trump wanted to make of this, and the kind of, as you mentioned, Ambassador Sajanhar, the double talks, the double standards that have been going on. But at the moment, let me also get for our viewers what Vladimir Putin had said as far as bilateral trade is concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, Vladimir Putin had in fact exposed Donald Trump's hypocrisy. He had spoken about bilateral trade between America and Russia, saying that the US-Russia trade was up by 20%. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the bilateral trade on gas and power that Vladimir Putin was talking about. Take a listen, and then we get back to our discussion.
Incidentally, when the new administration came to power, bilateral trade started to grow. It's still very symbolic. Still, we have a growth of 20%. As I've said, we have a lot of dimensions for joint work. It is clear that the U.S. and Russian investment and business cooperation has tremendous potential. Russia and the U.S. can offer each other so much in trade, digital, high-tech, and in space exploration.
Ambassador Sajanhar, what do you make of this? I mean, here in India, we've been talking about it, the kind of hypocrisy that is coming out of the Donald Trump administration in the United States of America. And here you've got the Russian president, a man that U.S. stands so against, and they have been saying, end this war. To us here in India, geopolitical reasons have been given to slap tariffs against us, and you are shaking hands with this person. And this person goes on to say that between the two countries, between U.S. and Russia, you've got bilateral trade increasing.
Yeah, Shreya, I think this is another nail in the coffin of the argument that the United States and that Mr. Trump's administration has been making, that it is because India is importing all this oil, so we are imposing the 25% additional penalty tariffs, secondary tariffs, because he has not done that on China. China is the biggest importer of oil. He has given them respite for 90 days. He's not done that against Turkey. Turkey is a NATO member. They have been importing significant quantities of oil and gas. The European Union has been importing significant quantities of oil and gas. And the United States itself, in our statement, Shreya, in the Indian Ministry of External Affairs official spokesperson, he had stated on the the 4th of August, that the imports of fertilizer, of uranium, etc., hexafluoride coming to the United States from Russia, that has been increasing, that has been growing. And so it is, this is hypocrisy taken to its extreme. And what we heard also from the Treasury Secretary, mind you, just before the Alaska summit, who said that if it does not result in a ceasefire, then India could face even higher secondary tariffs. That means from 25%, it goes even more than that. I mean, that cannot be, if it was not so tragic and ironic, it would really be comical as to how a leader of a major country can conduct the foreign policy and trade policy in this, cavalier manner.
Yeah. On that very thought, Karl, I want to discuss with you and understand from you how you see these two meetings. The one Donald Trump had with Vladimir Putin, where the U.S. rolled out the red carpet for the Russian president, as opposed to the first meeting that Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelenskyy had in D.C. There was clothes shaming, there was putting down Zelenskyy, there was complete, ignorance of the fact that the Ukraine president is trying to put a thought across. Do you therefore think then when Monday comes in and Zelenskyy travels to D.C., he will get some of what he wants, or is it going to be a U.S., Russia, Trump, Putin-dominated agreement if it ever happens?
Well, if there is an agreement, and I think that Ukraine is in a bad spot because the only with continued U.S. support can Ukraine, for long term, sustain its war against or defending itself against Russia. So the outcome ultimately will be tragic for Ukraine. I don't anticipate that we'll see the same bit of outrageous, disgusting insult and humiliation of Zelenskyy this time, but the pressure is real, and Zelenskyy is in a tough spot. And the contrast between the two meetings reveals just what we all should have known for a decade, that, as I said, Trump has this love affair with strong men, with authoritarians. He respects their power and their attempt to impose their will. He's always been hostile to Zelenskyy because Zelenskyy did not kowtow, and the government of Ukraine did not go along with Trump's effort to use Russian disinformation provided by the Russian intelligence services through Ukraine to discredit Trump's political opponents in the United States. And because of that, Trump has been hostile. Modi and Putin and Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia all have the measure of the man. And when Trump went to Saudi Arabia, the Saudis literally projected a portrait of Trump's head on the side of an entire building. When Trump went to India, Modi was smart enough, and I might have played some minuscule role in this, unfortunately, to give him a rally of 100,000 people cheering. That's all that it takes. And Zelenskyy was defending his nation's interest and refusing to confirm Russian disinformation, and as a result, Trump has been hostile to him. That's it.
All right, let's wait and watch how this unfolds. You've got a lot of meetings that are lined up. This is not the last one that's going to happen in the peace process, if ever we're able to achieve peace. But I'll wrap it up here. Thank you very much to both of you gentlemen, Karl as well as Ambassador Sajanhar, for joining us on Times Now and sharing your perspective.